WOCA.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing.
You know, Ron, we do a talk show.
Yeah.
And yet, right now, I wish we could do a music show.
Oh, yeah.
We do have a music show on WOCA. It is hosted by our next guest. He is John Tesh. I love listening at night when I get a chance. Mm-hmm. I love the show he does. I love the little bits of information he puts in between the music. And that's why he calls it Intelligence for Your Life. And it's one of the best parts of the broadcast day here on WOCA. That song right there, by the way, is another example of his genius. I am not kissing up to him. Let me tell you this. Yeah. I used to think that John Tesh was a genius years ago before I ever had a clue that I'd be speaking to him one day. Mm-hmm. And he just has done so many things. And as a composer, now in this particular project, I think that we're going to talk about today, he is covering standards like the one you just heard right there. But he's also a very accomplished composer and an unbelievably outstanding piano player. I promise, John, I know you're listening. I'm not kissing up to you.
Larry straight.
I'm just telling you absolutely the truth, what I've always felt. John Tesh on the phone. He's a 4-time Emmy Award winner, a 2-time Grammy nominee, a composer, as I mentioned, the anchor for 10 years on Entertainment Tonight, which, you know, when people leave big, successful shows like that, everybody goes, it's gone to his head. This is the end of him. Not with John Tesh's case, right? Good morning, John.
You know, the original lyrics to that song that you played were Ocala's Information Station.
I'm keeping that.
I don't know if you know that.
Okay, we're keeping that. You know that, right? You know that we're going to take that snippet, aren't we? Didn't you know that, right? We just got to get the big band behind it.
Yeah, you got to wake them up. They're not up this early.
Are you in California?
I am, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for getting up early to be with us today.
I actually didn't get up to be with you. Of course I did. It just sounded weird, you know. Yeah.
So when we first knew you as a public, and correct me if there was something I didn't know about, but you were the guy on Entertainment Tonight, right?
Yeah, the weirdest thing about that for me is that, you know, most of my life was on local news and working at CBS Sports, you know, traveling the world. But the moment I took that job, which was a fantastic job at Entertainment Tonight, that's when my career started. So people are like, oh, yeah, you're the celebrity birthday guy. Yes, I am. Thank you very much. That's what happened there.
That's what they associated with? Now, please don't get offended if I'm going to say something about somebody you like. And I like this guy, too. But when Chuck Woolery decided to become a country singer, it didn't work out for him, I think, right? Mm-hmm. When what's his name? From Wheel of Fortune, the guy. When he went to do a talk show.
Pat Sajak.
Yeah, that didn't work out for him. When you left Entertainment Tonight, were you worried?
You know what's funny is that it's a great analogy. I was not worried, and I think the reason is that I'm just sort of a damn the torpedoes guy, build a parachute on the way down. Everybody around me was. My wife was worried. My kids were very worried.
Oh, really?
Starved.
What are you going to do, Dad?
Exactly. Well, my daughter was so young, you know, she was like, you know, what is it you do, Dad? You know, because she like had to share me at, you know, in elementary school or something. She said, I don't know what you do. But it was, and, you know, Jay Leno and those guys, you know, beat me up pretty badly. But I think
they do. I was going to mention that. That's in my notes to talk about in this. So, I never got that. I yell at the TV when I see that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I think they're jealous. I think they look at you. You're handsome. You're tall. You know, you can play piano, sing, and compose. I that's what I really think. Because if you look at Jimmy, who's the guy? Jimmy Fallon. I like him. Mm-hmm. But he's Conan O'Brien. He's a frustrated musician. I mean, they all pull out the guitars when Springsteen comes on Conan.
Right.
Conan is up there with the guitar.
Exactly.
What do you need to? You don't need to do that. What are you doing that for? But in your case, you really are a musician.
Well, the other thing about Fallon, I appreciate that. The other thing about Fallon is that he's a pretty amazing songwriter. I mean, he's just so crazy. I think we're all frustrated some things, and you'll find a lot of people, like the guy on Lester Holt on NBC Nightly News is a bass player. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, we all sort of want
really. I didn't know
ourselves as rock stars. So listen, I know Chuck Woolery, knew him very, very well, and he was an incredible guy. Sajak and I worked together. We were in Nashville. I anchored the news, and he was the weather guy. I can tell you two things about that. First of all, Sajak is incredibly funny. I think the only reason he's not Johnny Carson now, quote unquote, is that CBS didn't wait long enough. You know, what happens? They throw the switch, or they turn off the switch way
probably
too soon.
Well, my commentary isn't really about those people. It sounds like it is, but it's really more of a commentary on us, the public.
Right.
That's what I think.
Well, if you go to Australia, it's fascinating, because if you go there and look at, what's his name, Hugh Jackman, right? This guy does everything. Well, he's a product of that, of that world where you can be anything there. And in fact, if you're an entertainer, you're an entertainer. But here, if you move somebody's cheese, if all of a sudden it's like the all singing, all dancing John Tesh, it's like, whoa, no, wait, go back there and do what we want you to do.
Oh, really?
Which is one of the reasons. That's my theory, hypothesis. It's one of the reasons why I quit ET, was because it was sort of that old, burn the ships thing and just be that, just be a full-time musician.
Well, because as good as that was, and as much as that was true, knowing what we know about you now, that was beneath you.
Well, I don't.
You hate that, right? You hate hearing that? But you hate hearing that because what happens there is, here we have this very super talented guy bragging about other super talented people, and nobody gets to know this light that's not shining because you're shining on other people.
Exactly.
That's what I think I'm trying to say here, John, is that you are, when you're singing that piece we just heard right there, or playing, you're an unbelievable instrumentalist as well. Mm-hmm. Then I'm saying to myself, that's what God wanted us to see, and it's okay.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And we say that on our show all the time and on stage, is it's time for all of us to move from the place we are right now in our lives to the place God meant for us to be. I have to tell you a funny story, is that once I became a full-time musician and then started doing some radio stuff and everything, I decided that I was a rapper.
Oh no.
Well, no. I went to see In the Heights on Broadway. It's a Latin rap musical with my daughter, who is she's in a dance program in college now, and I became obsessed with this thing, how they took rap and dance and music and voice, and they turned it into a Broadway musical. And it was almost too conceptual, so it only made it for a couple of years, but it won the Tony for Best Musical. So I started writing rap tunes, and I did one of them in front of one of our audiences, or many of our audiences, when we were out touring, and the look on their face of horror and dismay. But it was a thing about my 16-year-old daughter, so I won't do the whole thing, but it was yo, my name is John, and I've got a teenager, and she's at that age when boys want to date her, and though I realize this will eventually occur, I picked up a few things so I could protect her, like mace and pepper spray and night vision goggles and lie detector and two guys from Chicago. I've been driven to this for the thought of her dating. Next step is enhanced interrogating. Oh, and
all right, that was more Weird Al. That was more like Weird Al.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was a Weird Al kind of a thing. Well, that was so it was the audience reaction that steered you away from that, huh?
The audience reaction was.
It's kind of funny.
And you
go
guys
back into your new age world.
You guys are so good at those sound effects too. Women can't do that. The ba-boom, the thing that you just did.
Well, it's because you guys have that nurturing, progesterone and whatever their hormones are that take care of kids, and we're the clowns. We're like, hi, how are you?
That's right. That's our job. By the way, there was a news piece this morning I thought you could use in your intelligence for your life bits. Men walk slower when they're in love.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was fascinating.
Yeah, Google it. It's a news thing this morning. I don't know who figured it out. But it explains everything. We broadcast from the mall. It explains everything. When I walk through the mall,
yeah.
I don't know if these 88-year-old guys are really in love, but they must be. They're walking really slow.
Once you fall in love as a guy, it's just harder to walk when you're in the warm-up suit. That's what it is.
I like how you're so uninhibited that you always give people credit for some of the things that you're incorporating into your tour, like the facing of the camera.
Yeah, right. You mean talking about recording the audience's reaction?
Right, exactly. And you give credit to the person that you got that idea from.
Well, the important thing about not stealing anybody's joke and giving credit is that they'll eventually come and hunt you down. You can't start telling somebody else's jokes, you know. But what she's referring to, of course, is for people who don't know what we're talking about, is I went out and covered Sting when we were doing in Entertainment Tonight his sound check, and I noticed that he placed a camera on stage pointed at the audience, and his tour manager, and they would look at the reaction of the audience for each song. They'd figure out, you know, what people liked and how they were reacting, and it caused me to do that, and it was almost like a focus group. And the songs that you like, you know, you're like, hey, I love this song, and people have their arms folded and they're going to the bathroom. So you sort of have to you have to be a little codependent on your audience to be successful.
By the way, I want to tell you something about James Taylor and why I thought of him when I was listening to your album. Here's why. Because when Fire and Rain came out, whatever that album was called, that album that was on, everybody was buying it because of Fire and Rain. I, for some reason, didn't warm up to that song. But there was a song on that album called Blossom. And I fell in love with that song. So I was the guy who bought the album for the non-hit, right? Well, when I went to iTunes to listen to the album that last song came from, I noticed, you know how on iTunes it has the bar and you can see which ones are the most popular, and I think that one that I just played was. Well, this next one was mine, even though it doesn't have the most bars. So guess which one it is. What song do you think is my favorite on that album?
On which album of mine?
The album with the big band that we got the last song from.
Gosh. Good Night Angel.
Here's a hint. Oh, no, it's not that one. It's this one. This is my favorite.
Oh, Blue Skies.
Yeah, Blue Skies.
Yeah, that's a great song. You know what's amazing with this big band stuff is that, you know, I grew up on Long Island. I studied classical music on trumpet and piano and some jazz when I got into high school and college. But we went off and did the sort of white key tour, you know, the New Age tour.
The white key tour.
White key tour. You know, I don't play any black
no
keys
black
anymore.
keys for you.
I played enough of those when I was a kid. When you're writing your own music. When you're writing your own music, you don't want to write in C sharp minor, you know. So you just,
never.
C major 7, you know. So anyway, I when we decided we wanted to do this type of music, I forgot how hard it was to play, you know. And I think that's one of the reasons why a song like Blue Skies and Summer Wind, those songs have stood the test of time, because they have that three things. There's a memorable lyrics that are not disgusting.
Right.
Number 2 is that they're very danceable, and 3 is they're complicated enough that they don't get old.
And there's this chord progression too back in those songs. I think that, like in modern songs, I mean, you have some songwriters who do that, like Elton John, for example. But you don't. I mean, most modern songwriters have like a 3 or a 4 chord, almost like a pattern, almost like you could lift it from one and use it on the other one. But back in those days, there was a different, and they used a lot of major 7s, didn't they, back in the 40s?
Yeah, for sure. That was a predominant chord. Well, it's interesting that you brought this up, and I don't usually have many deep musical conversations on the phone, but you really did pick up on something. When you're in music school, what they'll do is they'll tell you to take down a record, which basically means sit there, listen to the record, and figure out and write down all the chords and all the notes. And then what you see when you do that 10 times in a row, you start to see that pattern that you're talking about. One of the exercises they give you is to take the chords from song A and you write a song over those chords.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I just so you know a little bit about me, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I used to be the guy who did that for songwriters in L.A. I got $35 a song. Of course, I didn't write these songs, but a songwriter would come in. Here's what I'll just in a nutshell. I worked with Phil Ganhart, a producer, and he's the guy who did Spiders and Snakes and all those things. And he would get these writers and then singers, but he didn't want the singers to be influenced by the way the writer sang his own song. So I would, back in those days, this was 1977. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah.
And now you could probably use a computer. But I would take it note for note. I'd sit in his office with a pencil and then hand in the sheet music, and that's what they would use. So
let me ask you something. So could you do takedowns without sitting in front of a piano?
No, I wasn't that good. I had to have an instrument, a guitar or a piano.
Well, you must have an amazing ear anyway. I mean, that's what you are doing is sort of a dying art now, and that's
you don't need it.
That's what they were doing in the Brill Building in New York in Tin Pan Alley.
Yeah, except they were writing them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
They were
that's
famous like
yeah,
Carole
I,
King.
I did not know that about you, and that's pretty incredible talent.
Oh, I don't know. It was boring because I liked being creative too. But in that particular money making opportunity, I wasn't creative at all. I was just taking somebody else's creativity and putting it into a written form. You know.
Well, now you just described we come full circle here, because that's what I was doing for 4 hours a day, reading the celebrity birthday, so I could get to the music studio.
Celebrity birthdays. You have a load of fans, and the phone's been ringing the whole time. So, are you okay with taking a few calls?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for being patient. First of all, you're on the air with John Tesh.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Speaking of that, Stan Kenton had two guys over the years that could do composition, including writing out the parts. You know, they would do the lead sheet and the parts without working in front of a keyboard, and they were Willie Maiden and Gene Roland.
That's pretty amazing.
They could absolute idiot savants that way.
Oh, I wouldn't want to be called that.
No.
But no, that makes.
I mean, they take it right on the bus.
Wow. See, that's something I could never do. I can't look at a note and hum it. You know, I have to have a piano. Thank you for the call.
There's a guy that I worked with named Carter Cathcart. I've written some songs with him, and he could do and can still do exactly what the caller was talking about. Just sit there and if you needed it, if you're like, oh gosh, you know, I wish the horns. You know, I was listening to the horns last night, and there was this line that was driving me crazy. Can we change it to ba da ba 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 da da? You know, and he'd go, yeah, sure. Now let me just do that, and then he would write it out for like 8 horns.
Oh, wow.
On a bus, just like that, yeah. But the math that's involved in something like that, usually when you find someone like that who's working for Stan Kenton or for John Williams or any of that, they usually got an 800 on their math boards because there's so much math involved.
Oh, really, really? I've often wondered if you could learn that skill.
Yeah.
But I'm too lazy. I'll take the piano anytime. Piano and the guitar. Yeah. Yeah. So one of my favorite collections of yours is the Red Rocks collection, especially the video of it. Mm-hmm. So, but the other one we wanted to talk about is the new one, right? Do you have is it the John Tesh Big Band Live PBS CD? Is that what that? Am I reading it right?
Well, yeah, I mean the thing we did for PBS was a DVD, and it's also that album that you've been playing. The whole PBS idea is something that I'm very grateful to. I mean the stuff that we've done for PBS, the 7 specials we've done, have raised like nearly $20 million for those guys, but at the same time really allowed me to leave television and follow my dream, because back in 1991, I think it was, I wanted to leave Entertainment Tonight. I mean, I wanted, not because I didn't like what I was doing, I wanted to be a full-time musician. And I remember seeing the Moody Blues at Red Rocks on a PBS special, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to play there. And I started talking to my wife about this. The only way for people to consider me a full-time musician is to do a live show, not to do it in a studio.
Right.
So we figured out, that would be the place to do it, with the symphony orchestra, with like an 80-piece orchestra. And I went to PBS, and they said, well, what are you going to do? Read the celebrity birthdays? There it is again, on stage? Because they didn't know I was a musician. I said, no, this is what it is.
Oh, wow.
Well, we're not going to really invest in that because we're preparing for the 3 tenors, but if you did a show, we would take a look at it and maybe put it on the air. So this is really sort of classic me, ADD entrepreneur thing. Is I went to Connie, my wife, and I said, here's what it is, and here's how much it costs. And we took a second mortgage on our house, and put together the 80-piece orchestra in my band, and we were doing 2 nights at 15 cameras. I had the whole Olympic TV crew that were my friends, shooting this thing. And 3 songs in, it started raining.
Oh.
There's no cover on the stage, and violin players, they're not really interested in playing in the rain. So the orchestra left, and we were left there with the band, and we played with the rain just like pouring out of my piano, and the electric violin player, who was with me, he's like in danger of being just shocked to death, and the audience, they didn't leave. They had these I guess it rains all the time at Red Rocks, but they had umbrellas. They put their umbrellas up So at the end of every song, we didn't hear any applause. They didn't have both hands, but the umbrellas would go up and down.
Oh, wow.
And so my drummer leans over to me and goes, "Hey, we're at a Mary Poppins concert. Check it out." But that ended up being that us playing as drowned rats ended up making people feel sorry for us, and it raised like a fortune for PBS, and that started my career.
Oh, that's a great story. By the way, Robin and Vinny hit it off. Is that your brother-in-law, Vinny?
Vinny, yeah.
Vinny,
Yes.
yeah. He was down here for
funny.
something.
Yeah, for the veterans to help raise money
Right. He
for
was
the
helping
homeless
the
veterans.
homeless veterans, and
Yeah.
he came into the studio, and Robin and him hit it off. I got a video of them dancing somewhere.
The chicken dance.
Yeah, Vinny's pretty amazing guy. You know, he went through a horrible life struggle for about 30 years on and off, and he and his girlfriend were homeless for years, and so he really understands what it's like to be homeless.
Right.
And he masterminds our Intelligent Kindness initiative, where he goes out and finds homeless people, mostly homeless veterans, and finds ways to feed them and get them jobs.
And that's one of the things you showcase also for Intelligence for Your Life. You always try to pick up what other people are doing and showcase them and try to enhance the world of other people that might have just, that might have been an oversight in their world. They're saying, oh, okay, well, now I'm going to go out and help this person.
Yeah, I've never been a real fan of. I go to church every Sunday, but I've never really been a big fan of just sitting around and listening to somebody tell me to be a good person.
Right. Yeah.
I think that it's that thing. Faith without works is dead. Because it makes you feel so good to do something. The problem is everything just seems so big. It's like as Martin Luther King Jr. said. You don't need to see the whole staircase, just take the first step, and that's really what happens to us. It's just all, I guess this problem is so big, I can't.
Well, and if I could say, and I hope I'm not out of line here or going into something too personal, but when you and your wife were not married, there was a story, I think, in People magazine that you were abstaining until you were married, and they made how that could be a story, but the fact that it was, I'm sure, influenced other young couples. Now, that was a while ago, or this was some time ago. But that's one step. That's one thing you chose to do, and for some reason or other made it public. And I bet you there are some couples that took that lead and followed it, and probably are happier because of it.
Interesting point. It's that wasn't when we sat down and talked to the People magazine writer, 1992. It wasn't the headline that we came out with. It wasn't like, "Hey, guess what?"
Yeah, right. I bet.
But it just sort of came out as we were talking. And by the way, for guys who are listening, they know that the idea to abstain before marriage with my wife, it's not the first idea that guys come up with. It wasn't mine.
No.
When I'm making out with my wife, it's not like, "Hey, I've got an idea." But she
that's
said,
too funny.
she said, "Hey, listen, we've both been married before, and let's make this special, and let's let God bless this." And so, and it worked for us. But here's the thing: we got made fun of, blah 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 blah. But
right.
Just what you said happened. We were in Barcelona at the Olympic Games, and we were, I was doing some announcing stuff, and Connie was sitting next to me, and this woman came up, and there was her 16-year-old daughter was with her, and she said that very thing. She said, my daughter's been inspired by what she read in People magazine, and she's going to wait until she gets married.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
If it's just one thing like that, but then our son and his wife did the same thing. So you don't really want to be.
Or at least that's what they told you. Yeah. At least
exactly. I know.
Yeah.
Say, let's get real. Yeah.
John, I love the show you do in the evening, and I'm so disappointed we ran out of time so quickly. I don't know why time flies when I have a good time. It just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you guys are great interviewers. You ask, and you're not afraid to ask questions that might be totally embarrassing. I wish on you that someday you would interview Tommy Lee Jones, because he's an interesting guy to interview.
Oh, really?
Well, we'll work on it.
Our 7-second delay does not work, by the way.
I don't mean he's like that. He's one of those guys where whenever we would send a reporter out at Entertainment Tonight to interview him, they come back crying, and those are just the guys.
Oh.
So,
that's too funny.
That's so funny.
John, thank you for being on with us. You mentioned Barcelona, and I've got the song Barcelona that you've done. It's an instrumental. So we'll leave with that song. And John Tesh, it's an honor. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thanks, guys. It's been great therapy for me.
Great interview. All right, we'll be right back.
Habitat for Humanity of Marion County is a ministry dedicated to improving lives by providing affordable and decent housing. Help them help others by visiting the Habitat for Humanity Ocala home store on